Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Troy. Hey, listen, if you've been paying attention to the garbage right ecosphere over the last few days, you may have noticed that they are all really excited because an alleged whistleblower has come forward claiming that Joe Biden has accepted or had accepted bribes from a foreign power as vice president of the United States.
And the reason why this is extremely important, it is because there's a whistleblower that has come forward with very credible information that we need Christopher Wray's cooperation with. And this information involves something that many people have known for a very long time in Washington, D.C., and that is of Joe Biden and his family members' extremely corrupt financial transactions with foreign countries and foreign nationals.
This move to subpoena the FBI based on this alleged whistleblower is being spearheaded and led by James Comer and Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley's been making the rounds saying that he has, credible evidence from this whistleblower about this alleged bribery scheme. But take a listen to this recording of Grassley on Fox News when he's pressed for more details about what exactly the whistleblower knows and what exactly the FBI knows. He isn't able to come up with much. Check this out.
Hey, Senator, it's John Roberts here. So, we're wondering exactly what this is all about. According to a press release that was sent out by James Comer's office, it says the information provided by a whistleblower raises concerns that then Vice President Biden allegedly engaged in a bribery scheme with a foreign national. He goes on to say the American people need to know if President Biden sold out the United States to make money for himself. Senator Grassley and I will seek the truth to ensure accountability for the American people. Well, that really whets our appetite as to exactly what this is all about. Does this have to do with Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings in Ukraine or China, or is it something else?
Well, I guess basically we've got to wait to see what the document exactly says, but I'm convinced that we've got to get this detail, and at this time, the FBI needs to explain whether it's accurate or not. But this is based upon information that we get from what I think are very credible sources within the department.
But it doesn't stop there. Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, the one that ran away on January 6th, is also very, very confident that the FBI knows something about this alleged bribery scheme, and he's already demanding that Democrats get on board with prosecuting Biden, even though he really has no information about anything.
Senator, who do you think the other country is? We knew the Chinese connection and all that, but this is something new. Do you have any information on that?
I do not. I don't have any information on what the whistleblower has alleged in terms of the specific substantive allegations. Other than that, there is documentation that the FBI has. And I just say again to those Democrats out there screaming about how Joe Biden is innocent. Joe Biden hasn't done anything. Well, fine. Then show us what you know. Show us what the evidence is and the allegations. Don't be afraid of what the facts are.
Even Brett Baer on Fox News thinks that the Republicans need to calm their jets a little bit here because this is a potentially dangerous allegation that they're going on with basically no evidence.
Leslie, we caveat that we don't have any hard information. This seems more direct, at least in what's being said by Grassley and Comer.
Well, this is, after all, if there's anything to it, is about Biden himself and not simply his son and maybe through his son. On the other hand, we don't know who the whistleblower is. We don't know what foreign country was involved. We don't know how much money was involved, if any. We don't know what the specific influence that was being sought to do. In other words, we don't know very much. And this is an early stage of this. It doesn't keep these politicians on the Hill from coming out and talking about it and for the White House to respond. But we need to be careful here because, the air is full of charges, as it sometimes is, and we're entering the political season. So my advice is, let's be careful here.
Even far-right fake news clickbait, the Gateway Pundit, claim to have information from a whistleblower about this alleged bribery scheme, but then they claim that the whistleblower suddenly disappeared and they can't access the guy anymore. How convenient is that? They had somebody, they had evidence, and now they don't. Even Geraldo thinks that these whistleblower accusations, this alleged bribery scandal is completely full of shit. When you don't have Geraldo on your team, when Geraldo's calling you out for bullshit, you know you have a serious, serious problem on your hands. This is now apparently the garbage right-wing fascist tactic is to just make up lies about a supposed criminal history for Joe Biden and his family, claim they have evidence, claim they have whistleblowers, but then slowly walk that back, admitting that they don't have much. But it's just a technique to take over a news cycle, to implant ridiculous conspiracy theories in the minds of their base. Their base is going to be talking now about this bribery scandal for the rest of Biden's term, even though nothing is going to come of it, because even they are admitting that they have no details. They have nothing else to go on other than their belief. Chuck Grassley saying that he believes that the FBI has information about a whistleblower. He's asking everybody to take it on faith. Just a far-right fascist tactic to try and manipulate the news media by lying about a story, claiming you have evidence, but then not showing any of the evidence. It's an absolutely despicable tactic, but one that's typical for the far-right fascist MAGA Republicans in this country. We will see if anything comes out of this, but more than likely, this is an absolute scheme to try and dominate the news media. This is also going back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's claiming victory on this, saying that this was the reason that she introduced articles of impeachment on Joe Biden's inauguration day because she knew about this alleged bribery scheme going all the way back to January of 2021. So she's trying to do a victory lap because of Grassley and Comer's subpoena to the FBI, Marjorie Taylor Greene claiming victory today. So absolutely embarrassing, despicable tactics by the garbage right in this country, and nothing's going to come out of this. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. For Midas Touch, this is Troy. Remember, smash that subscribe button to keep supporting independent media.
The best part of waking up? Maggot Tears in my cup. Check out the new Maggot Tears mug available now at store.midastouch.com. That's store.midastouch.com.
I'm sorry it takes so long, guys, but everyone knows I like kids better than people.
How are you, baby?
How are you, baby?
I want to stay. Can I stay?
I don't want to go. Kids used to come up, reach in the pool, and rub my leg down, and I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Can I get a phone number for you, and I can tell you what I used to do? It's going to change, honey. I promise you.
A week or two ago, it looked like Marjorie Greene was attempting to gain an air of respectability, to normalize herself. She's not one of the crazies anymore. You can work with her. And then she went on 60 Minutes and declared that Biden is a pedophile and the Democrats are a party of pedophiles. It was an appearance on 60 Minutes that never should have happened, but regrettably it did. And she decided to double down on it with that video that we just showed you and tweeting, "I'll say it again, Democrats are the party of pedophiles." And the evidence that she provided was this old campaign ad of Joe Biden interacting with kids and a filter to make it look like they were taking a picture of what was already a video. So I don't understand thematically what they're doing there. Those are literally just interactions he had with kids. The final one, by the way, was him talking with Braden. You might remember Braden. Let's go to this picture. He had this interaction with a kid who apparently had a stutter. And so Biden, who has dealt with stuttering, talked to him about the bullying they have both faced. And what he says in that video, "I know about bullies, you know about bullies, the kids who make fun. It's going to change, honey, I promise you." That's the audio that you just heard at the end of that video that Marjorie Greene believes is evidence that Biden and all Democrats are pedophiles. It was the president consoling a little boy who had been bullied over his stuttering. She is the grossest person that has ever been just foisted onto the American public. This is now a thing you have to deal with. This creature, this troglodyte, now is a thing that you have to worry about on a daily basis. Like, we have had stupid representatives. We have had hateful representatives. We have had corrupt representatives. I don't know that we have ever had anyone as singularly disgusting as Marjorie Greene.
What is happening to Bud Light is every single red-blooded American, every single redneck across America, and I love them because they're my friends, are canceling Bud Light. And they're canceling Bud Light, one of their own, because they are so fed up and angry about it. You see, a lot of corporations are always worried about being attacked by the woke mob. The real huge group of consumers you should be afraid of is the right mob. Those are conservative Americans that once they've had enough, they will cancel you so hard, and they don't care who you donate your money to. They will cancel you so hard and they'll never come back.
And again, this is an insider from Mar-A-Lago. One of Donald Trump's own people turned against him exactly as we predicted. Think back a couple weeks ago, hell, maybe even a couple months ago at this point. There was news that Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, as part of the documents probe, separate, of course, from the election interference probe, had started to subpoena just regular everyday staffers at Mar-a-Lago, right? Servers, housekeepers, line cooks, groundskeepers probably, just anybody that may have some knowledge about the classified documents, because these are people, most of them, who would walk around the property. They got to see all the different rooms, and more importantly, some of them, even if they didn't walk around, would hear things from other employees. And as I pointed out at the time, Jack Smith, special prosecutors, they don't just issue like blanket subpoenas willy-nilly. Like, everybody who worked there, you have to come in. They directed these towards certain people, which means at some point, those names had to have come up from another witness or individual that they had been talking to. It's called a lead, and that's what Jack Smith followed. He followed the leads. He found these people, and now one of them is talking.
If you've ever used any scientific equations, you know you usually have some values in the equations we call constants. These are just numbers that don't change that you need to solve the equation. So there are thousands of constants that we work with all the time in science, but there are only a few that we call fundamental constants. These are constants that are applicable to any system anywhere in the universe. They aren't some arbitrarily defined constant to solve a specific equation. There are about 26 of these constants. They include things like the speed of light, the rest mass of an electron, Planck's constant, the charge of an electron, the electric constant, and so on. But almost all of these 26 constants apply to specific particles like an electron or a quark or a photon, so they aren't universal to all particles in the universe. There are only 3 constants that are truly universal in their application to everywhere and everything in the universe. These constants are c, the speed of light, g, the gravitational constant, and h, Planck's constant. This is the constant that was most recently discovered during the discovery of quantum mechanics. It's the constant that sets the scale for all quantum events in the universe. The physicist Max Planck first used this constant when he was working on trying to solve the problem of how hot things emitted radiation. He couldn't get his equations to match experiments unless he only allowed the energy of the light to come in whole increments of a specific value. It was kind of a fudge factor that he just plugged in to make his equations work. To get the frequency to match the energy, it always had to be multiplied by this value of about 6.6 times 10 to the negative 34 meters squared kilograms per second. He never thought there was anything special about this value. But it turns out it was the piece that made everything work. It was a value that tells us how on the small scale things aren't continuous, but they always come in lumps set at this scale. I can prove this to you by showing you some LEDs and how the energy always is a multiple of Planck's constant. LEDs emit light when an electron falls down from a higher energy state and emits light. So if I measure the energy it takes to light a specific color of LED and then divide it by the frequency of that LED, I should get a value that's close to Planck's constant. Okay, so first we're going to start with this red LED. So we know it's red, but we have to know the exact frequency of the LED. So I have here a little handheld spectrometer that you can look through and kind of see a scale of what the wavelength is here. Okay, so there's just this little hole here that collects light, and then it gets diffracted and spread out on a scale that you can read. Normally you just look through it, but I have my phone peeking through it so we can actually record it and you can see what the values are. With a bunch of white light in the room, you can see just kind of the full rainbow on that scale here. So that 456 is 400, 500, and 600 nanometers. But if I bring my red light right behind here and shine it in there, you can see we get around 610 nanometers. Okay, now let's try our blue LED. That's around 440, 450 nanometers. You see that bright spot right under where the scale is. Okay, now let's try our green LED. And our green one's right around 500, we'll say. Okay, now what I need to do is measure the threshold voltage of these LEDs, so that's the minimum voltage required to produce photons. So I'm just going to estimate that by changing the voltage until I barely start to see some light. Okay, for the green light right here, we get around 2.1 volts. So for the blue light, I'm going to go with around 2.5 volts. And now for the red light, we get around 1.7 volts. So we're going to multiply this voltage by the charge of one electron. So 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19 coulombs times this voltage will give us the energy. Then we just convert the wavelengths into frequencies. Then we take the energy for each color divided by the frequency of each color, and this is what we get for each color. If you look at all these numbers, you get almost the exact same number each time. If I average these out, I get 5.7 times 10 to the negative 34 joules per hertz. And guess what the real Planck's constant is? It's 6.6 times 10 to the negative 34 joules per hertz. With just these crude instruments, we're almost to calculate almost exactly Planck's constant. This constant is used everywhere. In Schrodinger's equation to the uncertainty principle. It's really cool how we can easily rediscover a constant that's so fundamental to how the entire universe works. What's crazy to think about with these constants is how if they were slightly different, we wouldn't be here. For example, if Planck's constant were only 2.5% larger than its current value, then the size of atoms would also be larger. The radius of the Earth would increase by around 10%, and that would lead to a decrease in the gravity on the surface of the Earth by 20%. So that means we wouldn't be able to have any significant atmosphere that could support human life. The same goes for almost all of the other constants. If they were slightly different, then we wouldn't be here. If gravity was any stronger or weaker compared to the electric force, no stars or galaxies could form. If the strong or weak nuclear forces or the masses of the quarks were only slightly different, atoms couldn't have formed. Every constant in the universe needs to be just what it is. There's no wiggle room. It's not like the universe would have just been slightly different if these values were different. It would be so different no life could have ever formed if you changed anything about it. This is known as the fine-tuned universe. One of the world's foremost particle physicists, Freeman Dyson, said, "The more I examine the universe and study the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense knew we were coming." So at first it seems that the fine-tuned universe like ours could be used as evidence for a higher power creating it with the exact values it needs to exist. But the counter-argument to this is that if the universe exists with intelligent beings that can examine it, then that universe must be able to support that intelligent life by definition. This is known as the anthropic principle. And that is that the range of possible observations that we can make about the universe is limited by the fact that the observations could only happen in a universe capable of developing intelligent life in the first place. But even with the anthropic principle, my question is, why does it have to be so exact? Why couldn't there have been more options that could have supported life? It seems that there was one shot at having a universe that could support us, and here we are. And thanks again for watching another episode of Reaction Lab. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Next, you're going to have Jack Smith, and I heard this once by a comic, he's going to be, you're going to see Jack Smith very soon, subpoenaing Big Petey, Little Petey, Medium Petey, Wee Petey, Author Petey, Petey, Joe Bega Donuts, Muscles Marinara, Squiddly Dip, Parmesan. All right? At the end of the day, that's who he's coming to speak to.
Let's get to the border. This is the greatest migration surge, you said, in the Western Hemisphere since World War II.
We're in the midst of the hemisphere's worst refugee crisis. Right. Partisanship is at such a high level. Is it simply a political reality that you can't get comprehensive reform done? You have to chip away at this piecemeal. What you introduced was a temporary 2-year authority to expel migrants, but with an exemption for asylum claims because of the immediate Title 42 expiration.
That's a Band-Aid. The Biden administration had 2 years to prepare for this and did not do so.
And you've been preparing for more than a year and a half. How rough will the next few weeks be?
You know, Margaret, we've been preparing for this for more than a year and a half. You are correct. And it is indeed, it's going to take our plan a while to really take hold.
And our state is going to bear the brunt. And migrants will be in crisis as soon as next week. It will be a humanitarian crisis because we are not prepared.
This is a decades-long problem. The immigration system hasn't been fixed since the 90s.
Both parties, as you and I both know, both parties have benefited for decades by not solving this challenge. Mm-hmm. They use it to bash each other in elections. And what bothers me about that, Margaret, is that, look, they don't live in a border state. So they don't know that the mayor of Gila Bend has to put migrants in his car and drive them to Phoenix because they are released in a town that has no bus stop. They don't know what it's like for migrants to sleep outside in the farms in Yuma because there is nowhere for them to go. This is a crisis for our border communities and for migrants. And so unfortunately, the parties are thinking about this from a political perspective rather than a human perspective. We also are very concerned that all of this is happening in the week or so before the rollout. Just today, I was on the phone with the sheriff of Cochise County. He has gotten no information from the Department of Homeland Security of the federal government about what the flow is going to look like, about what they can expect for processing in terms of how long it takes to process migrants. He's gotten no information, neither have I, about how many buses there will be available to transport migrants. Now, he's gotten the information he does have from me, because I call him every few days, but he's not gotten that information from the Department of Homeland Security. And Margaret, what's unfortunate is that I'm asking for that information, and I'm not getting it. And so either the administration has that information, and they're choosing not to share it, which is a problem, since we're the ones who are going to deal with the crisis, or they don't have it. And that's even more concerning, because how do you prepare for an inflow of migrants when you don't know what you're going to expect?
And that hasn't been shared with the governor?
It has not been shared with the governor. I spoke with the governor yesterday.
Wow.
It has not been shared. So we do not have this information. There are 3 nonprofit organizations in Arizona that provide incredible assistance to our border communities. One is in Yuma, one is in Tucson, one is in Phoenix. They don't have this information. And they're the ones who are responsible for accepting the migrants after they're released from custody. So while it's wonderful that the administration is announcing things like a 1,500 troop deployment and these new processing centers, which will not be operational by next Friday, those are good things. Those are aspirational. That's not the same as operational.
Well, I respectfully disagree with the senator and the governor. Number one, we are prepared. As we noted at the very beginning of our conversation, we've been preparing for this for quite some time. We tried to end Title 42 repeatedly, and we're stopped from doing so by the courts. So we are prepared, number one. Number two, we have a Migration Information Center that is specifically set up to communicate with state and local officials, and we have been doing so. We are using our FEMA regional coordinators as our key points of contact. I spoke with Senator Sinima, I think within the last 2 weeks, and our personnel are in touch with other officials on a regular basis.